to be listening to Dr. Solomon Abu. He's going to present green hydrogen potential in Nigeria, results from the Hydrogen Atlas project. Can we appreciate him, please? Let's clap for him, please. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. Do I have a possibility the media team, do I have a possibility to project? Yes. Okay, so maybe I can start to talk while we get that.
Let's get the staff of this place, please. If it's possible, can we hear from you, please? Yes.
Okay.
So that you do it and do it properly. If it's not possible, then you can.
Yes, I will.
So if you can copy it quickly, I'll give you a click.
I hope this thing doesn't have a virus. So I'm very particular about this.
But you have it on your device or WhatsApp.
I don't have it. Can you use, if I give you this, can I use this from there?
Yeah, we're not going straight away. We don't have issues with that.
I'm just talking about virus. This is my. Yes. I will now use the. Even to the internet. So where do I put it? Just anywhere. Yeah, so I can give it on.
So once it comes to show, so it will show your
So you see at the end is up. Yeah, okay.
this is
So I don't need my laptop anymore.
this is for next.
Not the top one. Okay. Okay, thank you. So maybe I can start already with some preamble before he comes.
Put the microphone, Uncle. You need the microphone.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Please permit me to stand on the already established protocol. I would like to thank the organizers for giving me the platform to make this presentation. I would like to say that I will not dwell so much on the results from the H2 Atlas project. We have talked about the results from the H2 Atlas project in a number of fora, so I would not dwell so much on that. But I will try to raise some consciousness. I would like to put some things in context. It's something a part of what I have talked about also in some other fora, but I would like us to put it in consideration while we engage as stakeholders, so while we try to drive forward the hydrogen economy in Nigeria. So this would be the focus of my presentation. So my name is Solomon Abu. I work for Research Center Jülich in Germany. So Jülich is a federal government, so it's German federal government research center, research institute that's established nearly 60 years ago. So we do basically research. We have about 8,000 people that work together on campus. looking at the topic of energy. So energy through the entire value chain, materials development, cells, devices, energy systems, integrated systems, and all of that. And then also looking at bioeconomy. So bioeconomy from plant sciences, soil sciences, the agrosphere, and all of that. And then we also do research in information, so IT, all stuff. And then going also to supercomputing, neuromorphic computing, quantum computing, and all of that. Okay, so that's just a background to the research center. So we have, like I said, so there are so many people we have also quite a number of students and scientists from Nigeria or from across Africa that are within the research center. So like I said, I would not be dwelling so much on the results from the H2 Atlas, but I will try to put all of that in context just to help our engagement in Nigeria. Okay, to start, I would like to acknowledge my colleagues that I worked with for 3 years working on the H2 Atlas Africa project, a team of 17 people that really dedicated time to produce the much referenced H2 Atlas. And then I'm very grateful to WASCAL. So WASCAL is a strategic partner of our research center. We do not joke with WASCAL. So I'm glad to have the ED here, the board chair, the director of the Competence Center, my good friend, Dr. Bruno, the Renewable Energy Coordinator, and lots of others that are also here. So thank you very much for coming. So we appreciate very much the partnership that we share. And I'm grateful to the German Federal Ministry of Research, Technology, and Space for providing the funding that made the H2 Atlas Africa project possible, but also led to the Nigeria for H2 project that we are discussing today. So just a bit of a context to why Africa is very strategic and very important anytime we talk about hydrogen economy. So you have here, so whether you go up north within the sub-Saharan or you would see that we have huge resources in terms of renewable energy. You see some numbers there. So 39% of the world renewable energy potential are within the continent of Africa. So in terms of land, I will come back to why these things are necessary. So in terms of land, you would see that the land resources available within the African continent is vast. So that's quite a lot, over 30 million square kilometers of land area that's available. So again, this will translate to possibility to harvest energy, whether it's PV or wind, but also some other energy sources. So in terms of water, we are also not left out. So you see lots of rivers with catchment areas of huge dimensions, hundreds of lakes, and then we have one third of the world's major international water basins within the African continent. So in terms of human capacity, we have the youngest continent in the world. So what you see here is the median age in Africa. So if you look at sub-Saharan Africa, for example, or where you have within West Africa, less than 20. So that's the median age. Now let me make a comparison for you. This is median age of most of the 20 top countries in the world. This is as of last year. So you have an average of 50 years. So the median age in Nigeria between 17 and 19. The median age in the top 20 countries in the world is about 50 years. So this is a huge problem. I know you probably followed the discussion. So for many of these countries, this is a very big issue. So the population is aging. So the continent of Africa will continue to be very relevant because of our human capacity for now, but also for the future. Okay, so let me come back to, I've tried to somehow establish why Africa would always be relevant in the discussion for anytime we talk about green hydrogen. We have the land, we have the water, we have the renewable energy potential, and we have the young people. We have the young people that we do the work. So you cannot take Africa away from the discussion on the hydrogen economy anywhere in any part of the world. We will continue to be relevant, and this is important that we keep this in mind in our discussion. Okay, so this is just a summarized approach of what we did within the H2 Atlas. So we first did an analysis of what we call land eligibility assessment. So you do a land eligibility assessment to determine basically what percentage of the land area in a given country can be used to harness energy. So you do energy in form of PV, but also onshore wind, offshore wind. So what we did was to look at, for each country, so this took quite a lot of time to do. So we had to engage with stakeholders in each country to determine what we call exclusion criteria. So for each country, you have to look at existing regulations. For example, you have an airport. So what would be, how many meters or how many kilometers would you give away from an airport before you build a PV park? So all of those details, land areas that are reserved for building as parks and all of that. So we had to exclude all of those in determining the exact percentage of their total land area that can be utilized for green hydrogen production. I'll come back to this again later. And then, so once you determine that, then you can determine you can place your PV infrastructure. So from there, you determine the exact renewable energy potential you can get from PV, but also from wind. So you determine your maximal technical renewable energy potential, and then from there, you can, of course, estimate the possibility of producing green hydrogen. So in terms of the technical potential, but you can also determine the unit cost. So we went further to look at how this impacts groundwater. So we had used groundwater as our water source in the H2 Atlas project, but then groundwater is not the only source of water that can be used. So you can use groundwater, but then you can also, you can also use water from, if you do desalination, you can also get water then for production. But for H2 Atlas, we had limited to groundwater. Okay, so basically the main results, but just to mention here that comparatively, Africa as a whole is very competitive in terms of the unit cost. So what it will cost to produce a kilogram of hydrogen in Africa is very competitive when you compare it with any other part of the world. And there are several reasons for that. So like I mentioned before, we have the land area available. So the unit cost, so the levelized cost of electricity from PV or wind is pretty cheap. That's also somewhere in this presentation. So when you compare that, like I said, with other parts of the world, you have already from 2030, less than 2 euros per kilogram of hydrogen is possible in most countries within the sub-Saharan Africa that we focused our studies on. Okay, so I wouldn't go in detail into that. But here in Nigeria, for example, so we have looked at what is technically possible from PV, but also what's technically possible from wind. This is in terms of energy that you can generate. And here would be a key takeaways. I wouldn't go too much into the details of this. I'm going to make this slide available, but I want to focus on, like I said, some of the things I would like us to take into consideration as policymakers, as scientists, as stakeholders in our next pursuit. So the next steps that we're going to be taking in implementation, it is important that some of these things are very much taken into consideration. Okay, so I would go then into that and then I'll finish. Okay, so the first thing I have here, I've used this slide a lot, but I want to use it again. We should not be talking about hydrogen economy in isolation. It is very, very important. We should not take hydrogen economy in isolation. Most countries in Africa, or let's say in Nigeria, we have challenges that are interconnected. And sometimes it's difficult to take them just in isolation. So in driving our economy from hydrogen, we should not deal with hydrogen in isolation. I will get to why that's very important. Now, so I wrote here, we have to consider other needs, other challenges. So it's very important that we look at the issue of energy globally. And here I mean energy access. So very basic possibility that people can switch on the light at home and then they would have light. So that should be put into consideration. Energy access, food production, then extended value chain, and then the carbon emission reduction. So I talked about this actually in this hall. In this hall, I think November last year. I mentioned this and I want to say it again. One of the challenges we have as a country, we had in the beginning, was having to do just oil production without looking at the entire long value chain from the very beginning. That is changing, and it is important that with regards to hydrogen, we also don't make that mistake. We have to follow through the entire value chain. And that's why I'm particularly happy that within the Nigeria for H2 project, the focus is not just on hydrogen, but on making fertilizer. Because if you have fertilizer, you are addressing the issue of food production. You are also addressing the issue of carbon emissions. So we look at the entire value chain. Okay, so I have again used this slide. So this typifies the energy situation in Nigeria. I don't know if this has changed, but as much as I know, we have been around 3,000, 5,000 megawatts for as long as since I know. So this is a very big challenge. But then our population has more than doubled from the time this result shows. So it just obviously shows that we still have issues with energy access. And then the second issue is just to say that these are connected issues. So we have issues also with food. If you look at this graph, you see the cropland, and then you see the cropland per capita. And then you see that the cropland per capita is decreasing. So between 2000 and 2021, you see how our available cropland is decreasing. And this graph will continue to go further down. The reason is because the land is not increasing, but the population is increasing. So it's important that, like I said, we are not looking at hydrogen in isolation. We have to consider the fact that we still have energy crisis, we still have food crisis, and all of these would be important that we take them into consideration. So just to also buttress that further, that we still have a lot of deficits because we do a lot of food importation in Nigeria. So what should we do then? One is a multi-generational approach. There is a work I did with Professor Ajayi and some other people where we showed that it is extremely very important that we do not produce green hydrogen in isolation. So here we have what you call an agro-PV system. You have a possibility to produce your green hydrogen, but at the same time addressing the issue of food production. So there is energy access, there is agriculture, then you can produce your hydrogen, and then you can also go further to produce ammonia and make fertilizer and all of that. So this is very important. Then the other thing is, okay, so this is a typical example of an agro-PV system that we have in UNN. Thank God, thanks to the partnership with Wascal. This project is also funded from the German government. Okay, there is a possibility to use rainwater. We have shown from the H2 Atlas that if you just depend on groundwater, you are going to be limited. So you will not be able to produce more than 20% of the available capacity. So definitely you cannot rely exclusively on groundwater. But there are other sources of water. You can use rainwater. Very much possibility. So you can harvest in most locations in Nigeria up to 1,200 liters in just a square meter land area. So that's possible. And this would go a long way in addressing the issue of water that is required for hydrogen production. So this is very, very important. For 1 kilogram of water, you would need 10 liters of water. So if you produce hydrogen based on the available capacity that can be produced in Nigeria, just based on groundwater, we are going to deplete the water that's available for drinking faster than we would ever imagine. In fact, if you look at the H2 Atlas report, we have done a projection up to the next 100 years. For most countries, the groundwater recharge is not sustainable. So it's going to be very difficult. So rainwater would be a very good option to pursue. Okay, I say here direct electrification is cheaper. Sometimes I hear people say, okay, you generate hydrogen, you put it in fuel cell, and then you get back electricity. It's like, okay, you can't store hydrogen if you have to store and then use it in a fuel cell to get back electricity. That's okay. But if the target is to give people energy access, there would be no need to go that's going like you want to go to, you have a straight route that will take you from here to there, then you have to go here and go. I mean, it's not cost effective, let me put it that way. So you can use fuel cell if it's absolutely, if it's a place where you cannot directly electrify. But if we have to directly electrify, then there is no need to go through a fuel cell. So we can use PV to do direct electrification. That's cheaper and easier. Okay, so I've talked about the value chain before, and like I said, going for fertilizer production, methanol, and all of that would create more job opportunities and give us opportunity to target our peculiar challenges. Okay. One of the things, so many times people ask me, you talk about hydrogen in Africa, but you are not talking about how to deal with some of the challenges that make it difficult for people to invest. It is good that, so I had to put this slide because, so we talk about all of the things that make it possible that we can produce green hydrogen. But it's important also that we tell ourselves that we have challenges that we need to start to talk about how to deal with. So, and it's all about improving the business climate in Nigeria. So the issue of insecurity, the issue of ease of doing business, and then enabling framework in terms of policies and regulation to make this possible. So I'm glad the Energy Commission is here. WASCAL is here. WASCAL already has a regional-wide green hydrogen policy, and I think we can already leverage this to domesticate a policy for Nigeria. A lot of discussion here in Nigeria for this, but I would strongly recommend that part of the consideration would be to ease doing business here in Nigeria or across the region when it has to do with hydrogen. One other thing I would like to point out, also because I'm talking about policy here. I mentioned before that if we just go for conventional PV to produce green hydrogen, we're going to be using a lot of land area. So for 1 megawatt capacity PV, you would need 2 hectares of land. So if you do 100 megawatt capacity of PV, then you are using 200 hectares of land. So if you do the conventional PV, you will lose 200 hectares of land for 1 megawatt. So that means people cannot farm in that land anymore. So we can regulate this by policy. So we can say, for example, if you do anything more than 5 megawatts, it must be an agri-PV field. Anything more than 2 megawatts must be an agri-PV field. Otherwise, you lose the land that should be available for people to farm. Okay, I would like to end and once again say thank you for your attention. So if there is a question or comment, then it would be nice to do this now. Okay, that's right. Okay.
What is the second lecture? See, is it there?
Yes, I think this is maybe for the next person.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, can we appreciate Dr. Solomon Abo once more? Because that's research, a very splendid research work there. Thank you, sir. I think when the time comes for question and answers, then you'll be re-invited to come and take some questions or answer to some, give us some answers to some questions. But as it stands now, we need to invite the next presentation to be made, and that's on green hydrogen potential in Nigeria, results from the Hydrogen Atlas project. And again, we have this one, accelerating Nigeria's green hydrogen strategy. That's the next presentation we're going to have, and that is coming from Dr. Mustafa Abdullahi, the DG of Energy Commission, who is here represented by the Director, Renewable Energy in that establishment. So may I invite Ibrahim Zulu to come on his behalf. Can we appreciate him, please? Thank you. Thank you.
Good morning. Please permit me to stand on the existing protocol. But all the same, Emeritus Professor A.S. Sambo, you are duly recognized as my mentor and the past DG of Energy Commission of Nigeria. So, having said this, my name is Ibrahim Sulu. I'm here to represent my Director General, that is Dr. Mustafa Abdullahi, who is unaffordably absent. He gave me a speech to read on his behalf. But before going to that, I assume that all of us seated here, or most of us seated here, will know about different colors of hydrogen. And but the speech of my DG will be talking about low carbon hydrogen, green hydrogen inclusive. And I read the speech. I'm delighted to participate in this event and offer necessary support to the Cognitive Advisory Nigeria Limited and all the partners, the Federal Republic of Germany through the Federal Ministry of Research, Technology and Space, WASCAL, and other partners. The Nigeria for Hydrogen project, titled A Critical Analysis of the Potentials, Infrastructure, and Enabling Framework Conditions for Green Hydrogen in Fertilizer Production in Nigeria, is apt, timely, and fully aligned with the renewed hope agenda of His Excellency, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR. Nigeria's national energy policy, first approved by the Federal Executive Council in year 2003, recognizes hydrogen as a high potential, environmental friendly energy carrier. The policy advocates for its integration into the national energy mix alongside research innovation and capacity development to advance its applications. The policy was drafted by Energy Commission of Nigeria with full participation of key stakeholders in energy sectors, both the supply and the demand side and other relevant stakeholders. So the policy underscores the hydrogen strategic importance to Nigeria as far back as 2003. That is more than 20 years ago. Today, both the developed and emerging economies are racing to diversify their energy portfolios with low carbon sources, particularly hydrogen, classified by their various colors, green, blue, and white. Given this global trend, the time is ripe for Nigeria to establish a robust national hydrogen policy. So on this, several initiatives are ongoing, one being led by the Federal Ministry of Budget and Economic Planning that's brought together stakeholders in the energy sector to develop a policy, hydrogen policy for Nigeria. Energy Commission is, to a certain extent, is part of that process. However, based on our mandates, the Commission is also working on a separate in-house, is also working on hydrogen policy based on in-house resources. This is necessary because of our mandate. Yes. So a national policy serves as foundational pillar for accelerating Nigeria's green hydrogen strategy. In line with this, and in fulfillment of the Energy Commission of Nigeria's primary mandates, which are to produce strategic plan and to coordinate national policies in the field of energy in all its ramifications, to set guidelines for utilization of different energy types for the socio-economic development of the country, and also to advise the government. We felt we have that obligation to develop, to use in-house resources, develop a policy that shows what are the pathways we should follow in developing hydrogen economy for Nigeria. So at the end, we believe that this policy will guide the development of a national hydrogen economy and ecosystem tailored to Nigeria's local needs, interests, and aspirations. And also it will enable the ministries, departments, agencies, and other stakeholders to integrate hydrogen into their sectorial policies and plans. So my DG speech is just to give us some ideas about the content and the approaches we adopt in the in-house effort we are making to have a draft. Actually, we've completed 90% of the work on draft hydrogen policy. So the document is called National Hydrogen Policy and Strategy. It has 4 chapters. Introduction, that's chapter 1. Chapter 2, Policy and Strategy. Chapter 3, Implementation Plan. Chapter 4, the governance. The main objective, the key objectives or primary objectives of the draft policy are 4. One is the decarbonization. That in terms of energy resources, we are blessed, but because there is need to decarbonize, so that is why hydrogen comes in. And we are looking at green and blue hydrogen in this respect. The second objective is energy security, to diversify our energy mix. The third objective is the economic growth, to use hydrogen to develop our domestic industries and other sectors, and also for exports so that we can earn additional revenue. And the fourth objective is innovation ecosystem to support the hydrogen economy. The policy document has 7 pillars. The first pillar is industrial applications of hydrogen and its derivatives. The second pillar is hydrogen application in transport. The third is hydrogen for electricity generation. The fourth is hydrogen export economy. Then we have the blue hydrogen development, green hydrogen production, and exploration of white hydrogen and other emerging low-carbon hydrogens. We felt this approach is very important because blue hydrogen, one, as the previous presenter said, our energy security, national energy security is paramount. So the energy policy and planning these days is being driven from the demand side. In the olden days, is the supply side. But we have to identify our local needs of hydrogen and then deploy all the necessary resources to ensure adequate supply for those needs. So that is why we place the industrial applications of hydrogen and its derivative as the first pillar. So we want to know our needs in the industry, in the transport, and other sector for hydrogen so that we can put in place all the necessary mechanism to meet the supply. Yes, we put hydrogen transport and hydrogen electricity. We are not saying we are mature for all this, but we want to make a pathway how gradually Nigeria can, tap into this. Then globally, there is very serious work going in some country about exploration of white hydrogen. Also, we need to give a policy backing for researchers who want to research into this so that, we can also exploit the possibility of finding reserves in Nigeria. Now, the structure of each of these pillars is that we have policy statement for each of these pillars, then the policy objectives, a number of policy objectives, then strategies. And each strategy has enabler, which we've heard from the previous discussions, such as legal and regulatory frameworks, finance and investment mechanisms, infrastructure development, communication and awareness creation, strategic partnerships and collaborations, education, research, and innovation programs, manpower development, local content initiatives, and so on and so on. So all these enablers, they are pillar specific. The type of regulation you need for industrial application is different from the type of regulations you need to promote hydrogen export. So we treated each of these pillars separately so that if you're interested in green hydrogen, in 2-3 pages, you have all what Nigeria intends to do in green hydrogen. If you're interested in blue hydrogen, in 3 pages, you have all the provisions Nigeria intends, in that. If you're interested in export, the same thing. And if you're interested in export of green hydrogen, you have these two, just under 2 pillars, not everything much together. So that is the approach. Now, chapter 4 is on governance. The document we produce, or we are about to finish, all the available information, the WASCA report, the H2 Atlas, then the policies and strategy of many countries, Kenya, Saudi Arabia, India, China, Oman, all available. Our team we studied all this policy to see what we can borrow from other countries before we put up. From there, from the experiences, we put together, the policy. So, for the governance, chapter 4, we are proposing in the policy, in the document, a National Hydrogen Council as the apex coordinating body for Nigeria's hydrogen economy, and to be chaired by the presidency and concretely by the vice president. Then the second structure is a technical think tank secretariat for that council, and we think, based on the mandate of Energy Commission of Nigeria, which is energy in all its ramifications, that the commission is better suited to play the secretariat for that National Energy Council. Then the council, the National Hydrogen Council, that should have 2 subcommittees, one for exports and one subcommittee for national, domestic or local markets. We have to separate exports from our local needs, so that we don't make the mistake of the oil and gas, that we are exporting crude oil and we don't have crude for refining locally. So we need to know our needs. So we have to have a separate mechanism to satisfy our needs to meet the hydrogen that is needed for fertilizer companies, for refining, for steel, and for other applications. Yes. Then, so roughly, this is what we are proposing under the governance. Now, implementation roadmap, that when the policy is approved, there should be immediate actions within the first 2 years of approval that must be done by this National Hydrogen Committee. And then another 3 years, making 5 years. That all these things should be spelled out in the policy. So the first phase is the approval of the National Hydrogen Policy, immediately follow with the establishment of the National Hydrogen Council. Then issue of regulations has to be fast-tracked. Then at least a pilot for green hydrogen, about 50 megawatts, we should be able to have a pilot. Then also for blue hydrogen, because we are a gas-rich country, we are using already we are using hydrogen currently in Nigeria, though the hydrogen we are using are gray hydrogen. So we have to find a way of, at least some of them, will take them to blue hydrogen, while we are still working on green hydrogen. So there should be also pilots on the CCUS to convert our current production of gray hydrogen to blue. Then, as we heard from Dr. Solomon, the issue of hybrid solar hydrogen should be there too. The issue of the agri-PV, yes. Then the phase 2 is scaling up the hydrogen exports, for example, via Lekki ports. Then attracting investment of about $5 billion in private investment. Then economic and environmental impacts, such as we should project about in the next maybe 10 years to have about 500,000 jobs in the hydrogen value chain. Then GDP to reach about 10 billion USD. The emission reduction, because of the hydrogen economy, be targeting 20% emission reduction in industrial CO2. Key recommendations for the government: the issue of incentives also has to be approved. Private sector partner on pilot projects, that like Dangote, for example, that some of the trucks of Dangote be converted to hydrogen, and some other big fleets like that. Then the issue, also program for the academia, NGOs, in terms of a promotion of local content in hydrogen, technology and training, research and innovation. So in summary, the policy, the ECN in-house drafted national hydrogen policy and strategy prioritize demand-side driven policy. That's the demand-side driven, in the need of industry, transport, and power sector. The policy emphasizes securing the domestic market, replacing gray hydrogen in refining and fertilizer with blue and green hydrogen. The policy fosters a private sector-led approach across supply chains and the end-use applications, establishes hydrogen export as a standalone business, leveraging on the existing ports. Pilot hydrogen integration in transport with time. Gradual integration of hydrogen into power generation also with time. Enable a structured transition from gray to blue hydrogen. Promote pragmatic green hydrogen production and white hydrogen exploration. And as we heard from Mr. Tokwe Togun when he made the first presentation, that not about 2 months ago, precisely 17 May 2025, the President gave approval and inaugurated Interministerial Committee on Research and Innovation. The committee has 5 priority areas, and energy is one of them, energy security is one of them, and Energy Commission is leading that pillar. So Energy Commission of Nigeria is ready to provide the strategic leadership to drive hydrogen development by leveraging the National Hydrogen Policy and Strategy and the Energy Security Committee under the Interministerial Committee on Research and Innovation. Yes. I said the Ministry of Economic and the Ministry of Budget and Economic Planning is coordinating a work in there, but I think what we need to do at the end is to bring all these documents together to have an harmonized national hydrogen policy. But as Energy Commission of Nigeria, based on what we are created to do and paid to do, I think we need to have an independent expert vision on how the hydrogen economy should be developed in Nigeria. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time. I hope you are enjoying the presentations. So the next on the agenda now is introduction to the Nigeria 4H2 project and general overview by Dr. Congo Waskal. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, next. This one is for next. Okay. Fine. Good morning, everyone. I would also like to stand on the already well-established protocol and go straight to my presentation. So before going to the presentation itself, our partner, the funder, BMFTR, as was represented online, but given the delay we had this morning, I've just seen that the representative has sent me a short speech so that we can give a few words on their behalf to the audience, the authorities and participants here. So I would like to quickly read what has been sent to me by Madam Kerstin Anasi, who was representing BMBF. She had to leave the platform because she has been urgently called by the ministry there. So I will open the bracket and read what has been sent to me. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, dear partners and colleagues, it's a great honor to be here in Abuja, even virtually, today to mark the conclusion of a project that stands as a shining example of how international cooperation can create innovative and sustainable solutions to share global challenges. With the Nigeria 4H project, we have pursued a clear and common goal to lay the foundation for a locally anchored sustainable fertilizer production in Nigeria based on green hydrogen and green ammonia. Nigeria finds itself at a strategic crossroads. On the one hand, rising demand for fertilizer is critical to strengthening food security and agricultural productivity. On the other hand, dependence on volatile global supply chains poses serious risks. Yet Nigeria also has an extraordinary opportunity: abundant renewable energy resource, solar, wind, and hydropower that can be harnessed for sustainable and independent growth. Green hydrogen is a key technology, not just for energy, but as a driver for agricultural transformation, industrial development, and climate resilience. I would like to express my deepest appreciation to the government of the Federal Republic of Nigeria for its political support and commitment to this important initiative. In particular, I thank His Excellency, the Vice President of Nigeria, honorable ministers, the Minister of Education, Science and Technology, and the government and all government and agencies that have supported this effort
with vision and leadership. I would also like to thank the German embassy in Abuja for their valuable support on the ground, which has contributed greatly to the success of this project. I would also like to thank our colleagues from GIZ and the H2 Diplomacy Office for their support. My sincere thanks also goes to WASCAL, Cogniti Advisory, Federal University of Technology in Akure, and Mina, Dichema, and all scientific and technical partners, both in Nigeria and Germany, for their outstanding work. The report presented today provides a robust and evidence-based framework for decision-making, investment, and further bilateral collaboration. The German federal government remains committed to working with Nigeria in building a resilient, sustainable, and innovation-driven economy with green hydrogen as a cornerstone. Thank you for your attention. So I close now the brackets for the message sent to go now to my presentation. I come back to myself. Thank you. Can I have the presentation now? Okay. This is just an introductive presentation just to present to the audience what is the Nigerian 4H project, what has been the stakeholders, what has been the roles and the works performed by all the partners and various stakeholders in Nigeria, at WASCAL and Germany, and also before we go to the presentation of the result itself, after this presentation. So let's move to the context. Of course, it's known by everybody in this room that green hydrogen is considered more and more to play a prominent role in the coming energy transition at global level, and it's more and more considered in many strategies, political commitment of many countries all over the world as one of the key solutions to decarbonize a lot of sectors of our socioeconomic life. So the case of, this is what has been motivating WASCAL to undertake a set of initiatives, including, of course, the H2 Atlas, just presented by, coordinated by Solomon Agbo. I would like to thank him for his presence here. And from this starting point, H2 Atlas, the master program in the area of capacity building has been initiated, as well as, some policy and strategic support to the ECOWAS region, entire ECOWAS region, as well as targeted support and demonstrative projects on our country members. So, driven by that, this Nigerian 4H study has been, developed in the objective to investigate the potential for green hydrogen and the enabling framework for the manufacture of fertilizers based on green ammonia, and also give an indication to define a path for an acceptable energy transition in Nigeria. This, of course, because Nigeria is a concentration of a lot of energy resource. Nigeria is a strong economy in our region, and Nigeria can carry, this momentum on its own shoulders to bring on in the topic of green hydrogen and its various applications, all the countries of the region. So the project, of course, is coordinated by WASCAL, who is leading the project, interacting with the funder, preparing all the documentation, reviewing all the reports, coordinating the interactions with partners, and has two components. The first component is developed by a consortium of Nigerian partners that involves, of course, Community Advisory, University, FUTA, FUTMINA, Abuad, and this consortium is led by Professor Ajayi, that I would like to thank for his work. And also the second component that I will briefly present in the coming slides is conducted by DECIMA. DECIMA is a specialized agency, governmental agency in Germany, who has done a lot of work in terms of water management for green hydrogen production, cost assessment of green hydrogen production, and also, looking at the fertilizer aspect. They have supported us and of course, in looking at the potential and also analyzing the various sectors involved in this green hydrogen and green ammonia. Yes, and estimation of cost. So they have led the component 2. To come in more detail in the component 1 is basically to review the existing literature, policies, looking at the various sectors involved in Nigeria, and also interact with stakeholders and also initiate some steps for stakeholders, the key stakeholders engagement in Nigeria. This has led the team to interactions with several ministries, federal ministries, namely the one in charge of water resource, environment, energy, budget and planning, finance, and so on. And also to stimulate stakeholders so that I'm happy to hear from the Energy Commission that they are thinking of a kind of institutional organization that can lead the topic of green hydrogen in Nigeria. This is one of the activities to which the component 1 aim to reach. Component 2 is a technical part that looks at infrastructure assessment in Nigeria in one hand, and also infrastructure needed for production of green hydrogen and green ammonia in particular, and also evaluation of different scenarios that are considered by looking at the literature review and all the past works that have also been conducted in Nigeria, in order to calculate also the cost and give recommendations for future perspectives. So this is basically the component 2. And just to remind, some of you have been part of all these activities, but just to remind to the new participants, we had the kickoff project of this meeting in January this year in Abuja here. We had a stakeholders engagement meeting, of course, during the visit of the German hydrogen commissioner in Nigeria here, with a strong delegation from Germany. We have gone across, we have met different stakeholders, ministers, agencies, various agencies, and also even the vice president. And the project has been conducted by bi-weekly meetings, data collections, permanent, regular interactions, in order to have the report that has been today handed over by our leaders to the representative of government of Nigeria. So there have been some challenge, but like as any of human activity, it should not be perfect, but we have been able to go across to undergo this, overcome these challenges and have the report that has been presented today. So it's not a perfect word, but it's a first step that may be complemented, corrected, adjusted by all of you here. So we would humbly like you to accept the weakness that you will have to observe in the report. And we are available for more discussions, for corrections if needed, and open to collaborate for the future next step after this report. Thank you.
All right, and there has been Dr. Bruno Kogo of WASCO. Can we appreciate him, please? Can we put our hands together for him? That was an eloquent presentation. We are lucky he didn't forget the major part of what he wanted to do. We thank you. Now, we just have an information, so we need to do a little adjustment now. We have Dr. Michaela Lofa Daniela from Germany that's already on the line. She is going to address us on green hydrogen and green ammonia production in Nigeria. I hope those handling the line are ready. All right, so that we can welcome her formally and then get her on the line to talk to us. Dr. Michaela Lofa Daniela. To talk to us on green hydrogen and green ammonia production in Nigeria.
Hi everyone, are you able to hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Can you hear me now? Sorry.
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead, please.
Okay, and are you able to see my presentation right now, my slides?
We're not seeing it yet, but then we are seeing a sign from you. We're seeing something, we're not seeing you yet.
But you can see my slides, at least.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. One moment. Great, so now you see the blue background of the HEMA, I guess.
Exactly.
Okay, perfect, so it's working. Okay, so thank you so much for the flexibility that you allowed me to move the presentation. I was actually prepared for the end. Well, this was the plan, but fortunately I will have to leave a bit earlier, so I'm not able to stay until the end. So second thing is like my colleague, Michaela, she's not able to be here today. She's unfortunately on sick leave. She's ill since a couple of days, so I had to jump today to assume the whole presentation from her side. So I'll do my best today. Okay, so I'm gonna talk about the results of the study on green hydrogen and green ammonia production in Nigeria. It was conducted by STECHEMA in cooperation with WASCAL. First of all, a bit introduction about what is STECHEMA, who we are. We are a Society for Chemical Engineering and Biotechnology. We are based in Frankfurt. Basically, we are a network of experts from science, industry, academia also. And we have the goal is to foster the exchange in chemical engineering, process technology, biotechnology. Like I said, we are a network. We are currently around 5,500 members. It has individuals, companies, institutions. Our goal is basically to identify and evaluate new technologies and to be a bridge or help by this transition from the research into industrial applications. So we have currently national and also international projects. Our focus is chemical industry, hydrogen, synthetic fuels, water management. Here you can see, for example, some examples of some of our latest publications in the field. Now we begin with the green hydrogen production. First of all, very brief introduction. How do we produce green hydrogen? Yeah, there are, and this is here a basic setup for the whole green hydrogen production. We have two key inputs. First of all, power from renewable sources. Could be solar, could be wind, could be hydropower. And of course, we have water, which is our source of hydrogen. We have our electrolyzer. There inside the, let's say in easy words, the electricity splits the water molecule, and in this way we obtain hydrogen and oxygen as products. Afterwards, hydrogen is compressed and it can be distributed. It can be distributed as a gas or as a liquid, or it can be further processed into other molecules, like for example, it can be converted to ammonia or to methanol or other type of synthetic fuels. So what are the key cost elements inside the hydrogen value chain or hydrogen production? Most important would be definitely electrolyzer stack. Yeah. Additionally, we have something that is called the full load hours. It means how effectively I can use my electrolyzer, or it's being used, my electrolyzer. And of course, one very important factor will be also the energy prices, the renewable energy I'm using for that. So here you can see, for example, how hydrogen price builds up across the whole stages. We have the renewables, we have the hydrogen production, we have final transportation. As you can see, each stage includes its own cost, it includes also its own profit margin, and this explains also why end user prices are sometimes so high, yeah? And why reducing the cost in any of these points can make a huge difference. Okay, now let's go to green hydrogen production in Nigeria. For this, of course, we need to talk about renewable energy and conditions for renewable production. Yeah, for example, here we have solar irradiation. We can see that in the north of Nigeria, it has the highest potential for solar production. And that means also for hydrogen production. Typical PV output goes from 1,200 up to 1,800 kilowatt hours per kilowatt peak. This means around 1,200 up to 1,800 full load hours. Yeah, it means the full capacity working time of my system, let's say. Now, some conditions for wind. In this case, the average full hours in Nigeria is much less compared to solar conditions. Yeah, we have here full load hours from 500 up to around 1,000 hours per year, which, like I said, is much less, for example, compared to solar energy. Finally, we have also hydropower. Yeah, hydropower has the highest efficiency. Here it's possible to reach up to 4,600 full load hours per year. Of course, hydropower is different because it's more stable, it's possible to control, and it does not depend on weather variability. Yeah, that's why it's also possible to get higher full load hours per year. And finally, hydrogen production cost. Yeah. So first of all, it's important to clarify that the price of the electrolyzer is not dependent on the power source. It means it doesn't depend if the energy is coming from solar, wind, or hydropower. Second, the full load hours obtained from each type of source is also very important. Yeah. Of course, if I have more hours, more full hours, then I have a better utilization of my whole system, and then I will have also lower cost per kilogram of hydrogen. If I have just a few hours in the year or less hours, then the hydrogen will be also more expensive. Yeah. Currently, we found that hydrogen prices go or range between 7 and 25 euros per kilogram. It depends on the energy source. For example, wind conditions lead to the highest prices, while hydropower allows to produce hydrogen at lower price. Anyway, these hydrogen production costs are expected to fall definitely. Predictions say that around 3 to 6 kilograms by 2060 is expected. Of course, it is expected that the technology will reach certain maturity, so it will get more efficient, and also it will be possible to produce cheaper over the time. Now let's move on to the topic of green ammonia and fertilizer production in Nigeria. Here first I want to clarify that we only considered green ammonia production for the fertilizer industry. Other uses of green ammonia were not considered here inside the scope of this work, so every time I talk about green ammonia production or ammonia production is in the context of fertilizer production. So here we have first a general description of the process for producing fertilizers from ammonia. This is a process which is focused on NPK blends fertilizers. And how does it happen? First, we have our ammonia production unit. This is composed by the steam methane reforming unit. This is where hydrogen is produced. In this case, hydrogen is produced from natural gas in this steam methane reforming unit. Afterwards, we have Haber-Bosch synthesis loop, and this is exactly the point where ammonia synthesis takes place from hydrogen and nitrogen. And after, how do we go from ammonia to fertilizers? We have different options. Ammonia can be first of all combined with CO2, carbon dioxide, for example, and then we can produce urea. Or ammonia can be also combined with other inorganic acids, and then we can produce ammonium sulfate, ammonium phosphate. And then after, this is what we call precursors, also urea, ammonium sulfate, ammonium phosphate. They can be mixed in different proportions to form the NPK blend, NKP blend, sorry. So let's move here. So now here again, a bit description about how does it work, the whole ammonia fertilizer production in Nigeria. So currently the fertilizer industry is focused on urea production, and so the local market is dominated by urea and what is called NPK blends. The blending of the NPK is currently performed using 4 different precursors. 3 of them are ammonia based. Like I said before, urea is locally produced 100%. Anyway, all the other precursors are currently imported. We identify the 3 main key urea producers in the country. We have, first of all, Natori Chemicals. They are currently around producing 0.5 millitons of urea per year since 2009. We have also Indorama. They have 2 different production plants, combined also almost 3 million tons urea per year. They began operations in 2016 and 2021. And finally, we have also Dangote Fertilizer with 3 million tons urea per year capacity, also operating since 2022. So like I said before, all ammonia which is produced currently in Nigeria is converted into urea. So here basically you have an analysis of the whole urea market in Nigeria over the time. We have different trends regarding the production, for example, the local consumption, and also the exports of urea from Nigeria. There are basically 3 very important moments, as you can see here. First of all, after 2010, when Natori began activities. Then we have 2015, when Indorama opened all the first production plant. And then finally we have after 2020, when Indorama and Dangote, they both opened also new plants. So for example, we can see that by the year 2023, around 4 million tons of urea were produced in the country. 1 million ton was used for local consumption, and around 3 million was for exports of urea. So basically the sector is scaling up right now. Anyway, these results show that the total urea production in the country is still under the capacity. For example, here, these are results of just 60% production capacity of the country. So it means that if we produce 4 million tons by 2023, actually this is just the 60% of the total capacity of the country for producing urea. Okay, so green ammonia production. So what is exactly the main difference between the conventional green ammonia production and green ammonia production? The main difference is the way how hydrogen is sourced, yeah? In the gray process, hydrogen is coming from methane, and in the green process, this is green hydrogen, which is produced via hydrogen and water electrolysis with renewable energy. Nitrogen is obtained from the air by means of a air separation unit. And basically afterwards, the process is pretty much the same compared to the conventional gray process. So as part of our task in the study, we had to analyze like different scenarios how green ammonia production would take place in Nigeria, or how can green ammonia roll out in Nigeria. So in this context, many panoramas are possible, of course, yeah? You can have a very rapid transition to 100% green ammonia production by 2060, for example. This will be the most optimistic case, or very optimistic case. Yeah, this will assume, of course, very strong policy, very strong framework, also a lot of investment. This transition can be also more gradual, more steady increase, maybe more viable under existing conditions. It can be also a bit phased to scale up. It means at the beginning it goes very slow because the technology is still very new, but let's say with the time when technology matures and costs also decline, then the production increase faster. Most importantly, which are the key factors influencing the scale-up of green ammonia in Nigeria? There are different ones. First of all, existing infrastructure is important. Technology maturity, as I already said, investment cost, and the framework, policy, regulations. So during our analysis, first of all, we got to the conclusion that the target of 100% green ammonia by 2060 was definitely very challenging, was difficult. Why? Because it would require that, of course, all existing facilities would eliminate their steam methane reforming unit, and they will be able to integrate it with green hydrogen, yeah? This makes also the whole panorama a bit more complicated, or let's say economically infeasible, considering that around 70% of the total urea production in the country comes from new facilities. Like I said, most of them are commissioned since 2060, after 2020 also was increased. And if we consider that just the steam methane reforming is around 60% of the capital expenses, then it might be very challenging to convince foreign manufacturers to migrate completely to a green process. Basically, to eliminate half of their process and just replace it completely by green hydrogen production units. So we analyzed different scenarios, like I said, in our task, and we were also asked to integrate the results from a previous study from H2B Diplo from 2024. They also had a publication about the topic. It was a study of hydrogen potential in Nigeria. And in this publication, they analyzed also different rollout scenarios for green ammonia production with different production targets up to 2060. Here is, for example, one of the scenarios that we analyzed. It means, for example, here that for 2030, we don't produce green ammonia. It means it will be just 100% gray ammonia. Then by 2040, we have a total green ammonia share of 20%. It means that from the whole ammonia produced in the country, 20% will be green. Then 2050, it escalates to 40%, and with a target of 60% up to 2060. So the question was, or what we analyzed was, okay, what does it mean to have a 60% green ammonia share by 2060? What does it mean in terms of infrastructure? What does it mean in terms of the amount of green ammonia and hydrogen that needs to be produced, actually? So we analyze different things. Here we show just one example with very basic assumption. For example, here we assume that all existing gray ammonia facilities, they will continue operating under the same technical conditions, where they will continue operating, producing gray ammonia. And then new plants using green hydrogen will be gradually developed to meet this green ammonia quota. And here you can see some of the results of this. For example, you can see here the total amount of ammonia to be produced in the country. We have also the green ammonia shares for each year from 0 up to 60% in 2016. We have also how much of it will be for the local demand. The local demand, we calculated this based on a forecast, based on historical data. And basically the difference between the total produced and the demand corresponds to the ammonia which will be available for exports. So basically the conclusion will be that additional ammonia production from green sources will be mostly reflected in higher exports volumes. Yeah, that's why we call this option our export-oriented scenario. Okay, here we have the total amount of green ammonia to be produced under these conditions. Yeah, we have, for example, for 2040, this will require a very 0.8 million tons of green ammonia production in the year, escalating to almost 5 million tons of green ammonia by 2060. Yeah. Also 5 million tons actually also very big scale production conditions. Yeah, this would require anyway very rapid deployment of large scale production plants. And like I said, that's why we presented this here as a big, like an example of a big scale green ammonia production with focus on exports. So we also thought about considering other scenarios, especially ones which would be like completely the opposite, something like more direction of small scale, decentralized approach. And this is the one I will present now. This is what we call here domestic supply approach, where basically green ammonia would be only used internally in the country. Yeah. So the question was, okay, if we are producing, we have already a lot of gray ammonia production. How can we produce green ammonia that we could actually use additionally in the country, in the fertilizer industry, for example? So, like I said before, we consider the NPK blends, which are very relevant in the fertilizer market in Nigeria. These are the main fertilizer products which are currently found in the market. I also mentioned before that they are basically synthesized from urea, which is already locally produced, plus other ammonia-based precursors, which are currently completely imported. Yeah. So we also thought, okay, maybe in a scenario where all this currently imported feedstock could be locally produced from domestic green ammonia. Yeah. Now we show a bit the result of this. So based on the forecast about the demand for future NPK precursors, we determined the amount of green ammonia that will be required. Like I said, it is small scale production model. It means that the whole share of green ammonia grows slowly and remains around 10% by 2060, which is in a contrast compared to a more ambitious export-oriented pathway. So now here, in order to compare both approaches, a very big scale compared to the decentralized or small case approach, and to give you an idea of the scale of this, I have some quantitative values for comparison. For the examples, we took solar PV. So here, for example, you see the capacity of renewables to be required for both the scenarios. Yeah, okay, we have an export-oriented scenario with very large production, or a very small scale scenario. We also have how much is that in terms of hydrogen, for example. For a big scale, we will need around 800,000 tons of hydrogen per year, for example. And finally, what does it mean in terms of ammonia production? Yeah. So we know that if we want to produce 4.7 million tons of ammonia, green ammonia per year, we will need around 800,000 tons of hydrogen and solar capacity of 16 gigawatts. And now coming to the part of the cost that I think this is the part that maybe most of you are waiting for. So first of all, here we have a reference, that means the gray ammonia process with cost breakdowns. Currently, gray ammonia costs around 450 euros ton, which is mostly driven by capital cost. Here I need to really explain that we did all this calculation based on data we found in public sources and our own assumptions. But we unfortunately, because we have very short time frame for this study, for this part of the study, we did not really have time to contact producers and to validate, for example, this resource. Yeah. So here I want to be very clear and very honest that this was based on our own calculation and, like I said, public sources. Like I said, the costs currently are mostly driven by capital costs, a lot of new infrastructure, actual infrastructure which is under capacity right now. But of course, it is expected that as production scales, the cost will decline also. Now we have the cost for green ammonia. Green ammonia is definitely way more expensive. Currently, the price will be around 1,200 euros per ton. The key cost or the driver or the prices of green ammonia is definitely the green hydrogen. It would be accounting for up to 90% of the whole production costs. Anyway, there are some important points to consider. Green ammonia production cost probably will decline over the time, stabilizing by 300 euros ton. But there are some other points. First of all, they will remain very exposed to natural gas prices, as you can see here. And also, we did not consider the possible introduction of carbon prices on carbon taxes. If this happens after 2030, then the price of green ammonia will increase easily 200 euros more, as you can see here. From what you can see here, sorry. In the case of green ammonia, costs are expected to drop, as I already said before, for the case of the cost of green hydrogen, especially after 2040. Electrolyzer costs are expected to drop after 2040. Also, cost of electricity, as infrastructure increases, it's possible to assume that to produce green hydrogen will be also cheaper with the time. So we could expect a break-even point around 2030 or between 2040 and 2060 for sure. And here again, for comparison for you, so you can have an idea how much will be the total investment for two different scenarios. Like I said, one scenario considering exportations with very big production numbers of green ammonia compared to one scenario where we are producing small scale, maybe a bit more decentralized. So for example, for the export-oriented scenario, it will require around 61 billion euros, which is mostly driven by the infrastructure, especially the investment for renewables, and also for hydrogen production. Mostly renewables production will require the highest investment. In contrast, a domestic supply scenario or a small-scale scenario will require around 7 billion, for example, making it lower risk, more accessible entry point probably. But in general, we can see for the whole investment breakdown that renewables definitely dominate the whole cost structure. And finally, some conclusions. So green ammonia definitely offers opportunities, of course. First of all, a carbon neutral export product. Also, it can boost or drive the development of renewable energy in the country, which means energy for everyone. And Nigeria has also currently a very strong green ammonia industry, like I said, around 6.5 million tons urea per year. And it might be that retrofitting these plants to the use of green hydrogen won't be economically attractive in the near term, at least. Large-scale production could become more cost competitive due to economies of scale. In the more I produce, then cheaper I can produce my product. Anyway, it required massive investment in electrolyzer, renewables, also a strong national strategy, and also a good policy framework. So I got a question. I will go to the question after. So it might be that a decentralized model might lower this barrier to entry, but becomes, of course, it has also some disadvantages, let's say. Small-scale decentralized ammonia production, green ammonia production is in a lower technological maturity, lower technological readiness, which means also probably lower efficiency, and this could lead also to higher cost per ton of green ammonia. Yeah. And finally, we think that definitely blue ammonia production, it means using carbon capture technologies in the gray plants, might be maybe a more appropriate transition strategy. Yes, this will be everything from my part. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Michaela. Can we appreciate her, please? Dr. Michaela Lofadaniela, we thank you indeed. We have taken down all your submissions on this occasion, and I know that at the appropriate time there could be questions for you, but not necessarily right now. But once again, I'd like to appreciate you for what you have done for us today on this very presentation day. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to go and eat. If you look behind you, you see that people are already taking lunch. So we'd like everybody to go and take lunch just behind us, and then possibly return for us to conclude our deliberations today. For now, thank you very much for your attention, and thank you also for being here today. Now, lunchtime, we'll come back in 15 minutes for us to conclude our deliberations today. Thank you.